Welcome. You made it. This is it. This is the end. Everyone's got their money worth, yeah? And thank you. You've come to this. You're all the people who want me making programs for Sky. So you're my kind of people. Can I just double check? Who, just to kind of make sure we're going to gauge the kind of right tone and everything, who is here to find out how to make an international comedy hit? Hands, show of hands. Who is here because they've got a crush, boy or girl crush on Phoebe? Oh, wow. And who's here because they've got a crush on me? Thank you, sir. Wonderful. So this is going to be good fun. So just to remind us of the wonderful thing that started in Edinburgh as a one-woman show and is now a massive global hit, here's a trailer just to remind us of the wonder of Fleabag. Please welcome Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Victoria Jones, and Lydia Hampton. Welcome.
Thank you.
These seats are quite hard on my little bony arse.
Oh, mine's got a bit of bounce.
Yeah, you okay? Right, so here we are, we're back. So can I just explain it? So Vicky, co-creator and co-written this stage play. Yes?
No, I did not write the stage play. I was the director
of stage play, which was up here.
And I was there while Phoebe wrote it, helping.
You're her rock. And Lydia, you did a TV series.
Yeah,
which was
produced
brilliant.
TV.
Just to clear it all up, because I fucked the start of it up, so that's good. Yes, so we're back in Edinburgh, and actually Fleabag's back in Edinburgh, isn't it, as a stage play?
Yes,
have you been to see it?
It is. I'm seeing it today.
Oh, yeah? Oh,
yeah,
wonderful.
Really
and how does it feel being back and being on that journey? Do you get reminded of where it all started?
I mean, it's amazing. It's just a very surreal... I was just saying off there, it's just so surreal that we're back here now, listening to that, which was so much of it was part of the original play, and being here and Maddie doing it, and just, thank you, Edinburgh, for basically. It wouldn't have happened without Edinburgh.
So let's go back. Let's go way back to kind of where it all started, and part of the point of this session to try and develop some kind of themes and some kind of notions as to how it got to be where it's got to be. It all sort of started with you two guys. Vicky, you used to do a lot of theatre shows, and you sort of forced Phoebe to start this off as a monologue. Is that correct?
She was asked by Deborah Frances-White, actually, weren't you, to write a performance piece which was sort of stand-up. And was it stand-up or was it spoken?
It was a stand-up storytelling evening, which is a trick. It's basically, she was just getting people to do stand-up, but they were like people who were too nervous to do stand-up, so she gave you a stool and said it was sit-down storytelling, but it had to be funny. So she'd asked me to do that.
And we were rehearsing something else, actually, and I was like, what? Because we only had 2 weeks to rehearse this other play, and Phoebe told me in the first lunch break that she'd written something else, and could I have a look at it with her? And it was the first 10 minutes of Fleabag. That she'd sort of written just overnight, seemingly, and sat on a stool and did it for me, and I kind of couldn't believe it. And we worked on it a little bit, and then she did it for this audience who kind of went mad for it. It had an ending that sort of brought in the father right at the end, and was basically the hybrid of the first episode of Fleabag, and it went down really well, and the audience all told us we should take it to Edinburgh. We had never really been to Edinburgh, and so we mentioned it to our producer, who was only 24 at the time, and she said, I know Edinburgh, I'll book it for you. And so she booked us into the Underbelly and the Big Belly and gave us like 2 weeks rehearsal. And 2 weeks before the festival started, Phoebe still hadn't written it. Oh. And so luckily we could stay in the rehearsal room overnight, so we spent pretty much all day and all night wrangling the rest of the play out of her.
50-minute show, that was the full Edinburgh hour sort of piece, yeah?
Yeah. So I was really pleased with the 10 minutes that we'd got, and then I was so pleased with it that I thought the rest would just magic out of nowhere before the 2 weeks. But I think you need an inescapable deadline sometimes. I think that the show would never have happened if the slot hadn't been booked and then I had to write it. I mean, I was writing the end on the train on the way to Edinburgh. And I don't mean that in a cool way, like we were writing the end. It's really not a cool way, but I was literally just on the train going, how does it end? I was crying. And Vicky was like, what do you want to say? And I was like, I don't know, this. And then she was like, fucking write that down then. Make that the end. And so it was quite smash and grab, and it wasn't something we'd ever planned to do as a theatre company. And it just sort of...
So that your theatre company was slightly sort of born out of frustration when you very first met. You were directing a play that you were in, that you weren't happy with, and you...
Yeah. I was
happy to have a job, but they weren't happy with me.
They didn't like me. It was one of those bad experiences where you're working with people who maybe are just, I don't know, I don't want to say vanity project, but like, you know. I tried to make it better, and they fired me, and then Phoebe left in protest because I was fired, and that fused our friendship from the beginning. And we started Dry Write pretty soon after that, which was our company, just sort of because no one was giving us a job, and we did everything for free and worked with lots of playwrights on various different theme nights, and ended up working with a lot of writers over. And
at that time, we hadn't
years.
even thought about writing ourselves. We were just really in love with new writing. Thought there wasn't really much opportunity for kind of broke recent graduates to really get their work seen or heard, and so we were just facilitating loads and loads of writers, and then eventually we turned around to each other and went, maybe it's because we want to write. After about 4 years of busting our gut to put on loads of new writing nights, we tried ourselves.
So you touched on it a bit there, but what was the process in terms of getting it from the monologue into the full show? Would you share drafts? Would you perform it for her? What's your dynamic in terms of how you work?
So that 10 minutes that was the starting off point, kind of, I knew that was going to be the tone, and I knew that it was kind of, in that first 10 minutes started off with the kind of Obama wank and the
interview,
and it also just kind of gags after gags after gags, but I knew that I wanted it to have a kind of heart-wrenching ending, and that for her to suddenly have a moment of self-awareness, and that's why she ends up at her dad's doorstep. But that felt like a complete 10-minute thing in itself, because that's how I'd written it. So the next 2 weeks were basically me like going back through my life to find the most humiliating moments, and some jokes that I'd somehow written down at some point, and then basically brought them in and just acted. Honestly, it was an amazing experience, because as a writer, I suppose it's like having the actor in the room as well. But to have Vicky there, I'd just come in and I would just test the material on her, and whenever she'd go, can't do that, she'd go, that's going in. All the time. She was shocked. And if she didn't laugh, it was like, that's coming out. And so just to have this, and Vix was just directing it and finding the tone with me, and finding how to, stage it and all that kind of stuff around, all at the same time. So it really came together really quickly. But it did feel like a splurge of something that I'd been sitting on.
It felt like nobody was ever going to see it, and nobody would notice, and that we could say anything we wanted if we were pleasing each other, basically.
Yeah. And it's come up that it's not autobiographical in some sense. You've taken bits from your lives and experiences. It's very personal, but it's not Fleabag isn't your life story, is it?
No, my best friend is alive and is here, for a start. No, I think the dramatic, I can't resist saying it's autobiographical, because the dramatic turns in it aren't true, and a lot of it was just imagined, so it's a decent, so it's a fun ride for an audience. But a lot of the humour certainly is, and a lot of the jokes, and the more kind of unfortunate little kind of one-off embarrassing moments, a lot of them have come from my own life. It's very cathartic putting them out to the nation after you've suffered these embarrassments yourself. But so it was a mixture, really. Yeah.
So getting on the road from stage to screen, in terms of Two Brothers, the production company, how was that decision made to go with? Were a lot of people interested in an option in the play, or what happened next?
Well, amazingly, I had my first ever general meeting. I just got a writing agent, and my first ever general meeting was with Two Brothers. Liz wasn't there yet, though. It was with Jack and Harry, and it was the day after the monologue, the first 10 minutes that I'd done, and we had a meeting, and they said, what have you been up to? And I just said, well, last night I did this weird thing, and they said, well, tell us a bit about it. And I sort of acted, well, I just sort of told them the Obama wank bit, and they went, we'll have it, great, I love it, what is this? And I was like, I don't know what it is, and then but they were like, we love that tone and that humour, so they said, and I sort of started working on a side project, which was mortifyingly called the Phoebe effect. I know, which I actually weirdly promised myself I'd never say, and now I've chosen to. And so that was parked, and then meanwhile, it happened that we were rehearsing this other play, and then what we described earlier happened, and then I was writing the play of it, and we were going up to Edinburgh with it. And then I sort of called them and said, I don't know, some of the stuff that I spoke to you before about is in this play. And they were like, we'll just go and do the play and see what happens. And then just loved them so much from the first conversation that we had. And that leap of faith they originally had just from those couple of jokes that we had in that meeting when Chris Sussman from the BBC came and said he really liked it. He's here today. Hi, Chris. Lovely Chris Sussman. And so I went back to the two brothers and said, can we, people are interested. Shit, what do I do? And they said, it's okay.
Can we watch a little bit of Obama? I'm going to throw the order here, Chris Sussman, just to annoy you. But if we can have the Obama clip, just to remind us, because you've mentioned it twice.
I know, I can't stop talking about Obama.
Here we go.
Power rarely gives up without a fight. Particularly in places where there are divisions of tribe, divisions of sect. We also know that populism can take dangerous turns, and there will be difficult days along the way. From the extremism of those who would use democracy to deny minority rights, to the nationalism that left so many stars.
Nothing! Harry?
I know what you were doing.
I was watching the news.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What was he talking about then?
What?
Please, I just need to hear this. What was he talking about?
Iraq.
Brilliant. So, a production company gets involved, and the BBC, in an unusual bit of efficiency, is quick to act. Can we talk about the process of the decisions made? And then, so the pilot was commissioned, and Lydia, I'm going to bring you in here. Mm-hmm. In terms of getting it from script to screen and the stylistic decisions, obviously to go from a one-woman show, in terms of telling the narrative, the decision to kind of address the camera as if it's the audience, what was the process of how you made those choices?
I suppose the one big thing that's changed from play to TV show is we didn't kill the guinea pig. We weren't allowed to kill the guinea pig. So in the play, Fleabag kills Hillary, but we weren't allowed to do that. BBC wouldn't let us do that. So that was the one big cut. Stylistically, so speaking to camera was absolutely necessary because of the monologue being spoken to the audience. So it was the mirror of that and how we recreate that in the relationship between narrator and audience, unreliable narrator and audience. And then I suppose there were beats that we knew that we wanted to hit. So obviously the ending and the reveal that Boo had been killed. And then I guess it was sort of working out where they might hit in the series, because there were discussions about maybe revealing that earlier. Do you remember we talked about maybe doing an episode 3, but then it felt like, actually, no, that needs to be at the end. So there was sort of kind of a skeleton that we put in place. And then just lining Phoebe's bedroom with loads of things that continued to make us laugh, all the jokes that were in the play. And then just kind of working out how to get from the big dramatic beats via all the jokes. I suppose that was the...
Was it a painful process? Did you go through a lot of drafts?
Yes,
what was
it was
that?
very painful.
It was really painful.
It was really painful. It was also because when the play felt so wrought, because by the end of writing that, you know, every single tiny nut had been tightened and every bit of fat had been stripped off it, so the story felt so streamlined, but it was essentially over 3 days of her life, and I was playing all the characters. So even though it felt really exciting, opening it up in this way and the breaking the fourth wall felt like it lent itself really well to that, because you know, the relationship of her front that she has with the audience and slowly letting the mask slip and letting the audience see things she doesn't want them to see, that felt really, really exciting. But then having to kind of fluff out her life and make it from a 3-day spiral into something that happens over a series of weeks, that was really hard, because I sort of felt like I'd got all the best material in it. And I put all the best jokes in the pilot as well from when we first did
loads of boring discussions about the cafe, wasn't there?
Yes, and whether or not I should keep the cafe and all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, putting all your best jokes first as well leaves you, I mean, it's a great idea at the time, and then you're like, fuck. Episode 2. And so I think it was just generating more material and letting go of the play. And then really choosing the moments that you try and break the audience heart rather than making them laugh. And we kept saying, first and foremost, it's a comedy, and that's what will make people open their hearts to this show. Is that it'll make them laugh and will disarm them that way, and that's her way of existing, is she's constantly looking you in the eye and saying something outrageous or saying something so truthful or whatever, and so to disarm the audience as much as you can. And then it was finding the right moments to throw the dart in. And that was really the sort of trickiest thing. But I mean,
and what did you learn from pilot to series? Because you did a couple of tweaks post-pilot, and you changed director, but that was just an availability thing, I think it was. What was the learning curve? What did you? Why did you refilm some stuff?
Cast changes because of availability as well.
A bit of improvising.
There was a bit of
improvising in the pilot that we reshot.
What was that?
Do you remember the scene in the cafe with Boo and Fleabag and Boo, and then we reshot it because there was, I think, in the original pilot, the scene where Fleabag and Boo are sort of shutting up the shop in the cafe was a lot of improvising, which was a decision sort of made on the day in a bit of a rush, and it didn't work at all. So we reshot it for the pilot, for the series, and it was much more structured, that we got back to that idea of cutting all the fat away from this and not making something fluffy and making something that felt like this has got a point and we just need to make it in the funniest and sort of most direct way possible.
I think the difference with between the theatre and the pilot that I saw was that we really knew theatre, and so things like Phoebe knew she wanted to do direct address where this was her audience, and they were the only ones that knew and understood her, and that she could tell them all the things that were inside her, but then she'd say things that would reveal themselves later. So she'd say she hated the guinea pig, she didn't feel anything about guinea pigs, but later she says, I realised I forgot to give Hilary her Earl Grey. And so you start to realise that there's more to the story that's officially what she wants you to know. So at first you feel like you're completely with her, you know, that you really, really understand her deepest soul, and then you start to realise that this is a front and that she's telling you what she wants you to know. And so that transferred onto the camera. It took a long time. I remember you playing around with an iPhone and looking straight into the iPhone to see if that worked, and that definitely worked. But then the camera we started to work out that it would play tricks with her, so that the camera's relationship with the truth was independent. Obviously you could see that she liked a guinea pig because she'd be stroking it or looking after it or whatever, but what the camera showed as the story went on became less within your control. Is that right?
Yeah, the relationship between the audience and Fleabag was the central relationship, or since the play, and the fact that she's manipulating so much. But in the play version, she has total control over what the audience is experiencing because it's just a monologue. And suddenly, when the camera's kind of makes it feel more live, and there are real people acting around her, and the world is more live, so we had to find a new way to make her feel like. So in my head, she was editing it, she was shooting it, she was showing you exactly the frame that she wanted you to see. She was cutting out when she thought someone was talking about some shit she didn't want you to talk about. She just cut out of it at the beginning. So there's a real sense of her authoring the piece, and then as the series continues, the camera hangs around a little bit longer, like when she starts to get emotional, she doesn't want the camera there, but it stays on her, and then obviously ultimately at the end it kind of bullies her and doesn't look away.
Yeah, she spins around and it comes around to face.
That was really exciting, like making that leap.
And that was a lot of talking with Harry Bradbeer, stylistically, the director. Harry. I think that in particular, though, was the first thing when we realised it was possible. When I was thinking about how to get that control over an audience, how that journey, the audience can be involved in a personal journey with Fleabag. And actually, I think that was one of the first revelations. And when I saw that image of a camera going, we're not leaving you alone now, and Fleabag, who at the beginning was so like, come into my life, it'll be hilarious, and then at the very end going, stop looking at me, was the clearest thing. And that was a very early decision. But then Harry completely, I just didn't know how to keep retelling the story of Boo dying without having to talk about it all the time or having to mention her, and I hate exposition so much. I just didn't want to have to keep bringing it back.
In the play, it would come up in anecdotes, wouldn't it?
Just like, her phone,
Boo did this and Boo said that.
Yes, exactly, and her phone message would come up. And then Harry, on like the first day, I think that we started talking to him, he said that he just keeps seeing Boo on the road with buses and bicycles going past her, and he was like, that, my dear, is a visual sentence. And my brain was like, poof! I was like, oh my God, there's so much you can do! And so that was a huge moment when I realised that then once we had that shot, we could just drop it in wherever, and the more unlikely the place was, the more fresh it felt and the more dangerous it felt. So that was thank God for Harry for coming up with that.
Ironically, that was the last shot of the whole shoot that we got. So that was
Almost
a dangerous,
didn't get it
a dangerous
as well.
bit of scheduling.
Everyone was like, just stand in the road. Poor Jenny. Yeah.
So getting on to the reception, obviously massively well received. How much of a surprise was that for you? What was the process?
Well, no, I think it's always a massive surprise when people respond to your work in that way. We had done the play, and the character had really caught people's imaginations and people connected to us. So I did feel like there are some people out there, if we've done it right, there are some people out there, if we stay close enough to the heart of the play, that will still like it.
But it was all kinds of people as well. The play and the TV show, you had so many people come up to you of all ages and all genders and say that they're Fleabag.
The play.
Yes, we went on tour with Maddie, who's performing it here at the
Maddie
moment.
Rice.
And then we took it to South Korea.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. They have in their theatre district, they have something like 230 theatres, and they're all in they're like black boxes that are turned into theatres at night, and all the people.
Like Edinburgh.
It is, but that's what they're saying. And basically, their main audience are women in their mid-20s, because apparently all the guys. This is what we were talking. We turned up. They're like, all the guys go and do karaoke, all the girls go and see a play, and they all meet up later and get smashed. And so they were like, they're going to love Fleabag. And so we took it there, but then there were subtitles in Korean.
We had a lot of problems with those because Phoebe's brilliant delivery was sort of being often about holding on to something and then cutting people with a shocking turnaround punchline at the end of each little bit, and we realised halfway through publishing the punchline sort of straight away, so everyone was just sort of reading that. So it took a bit of is that symbol? Does that mean that line? And yeah, so we worked it out by the final show.
But it was great because afterwards it was like the purest form of communication with an audience afterwards ever, because it was a Korean-speaking audience and I don't speak any Korean, believe it or not. And afterwards, the most moving thing about it was that girls were coming up and going, Fleabag, 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 pointing to themselves, and that's all we'd say, and I'd be like, Fleabag, Fleabag, they'd all be going, Fleabag, 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 and then we'd just all go out and just say that to each other all night. But that was, in some strange way, that was like it was really moving, that when someone just relates to your character.
Can we talk, just before we get into the next bit about casting, can we see a clip of Olivia as your stepmom?
Look, I know it's not really my place, but are you okay? Everyone's been really worried.
Poor fucker.
Yes, she's actually an expression of how women are subtle warriors, strong at heart. You know, we don't have to use muscular force to get what we want. We just use our
Tits.
Innate femininity.
Tits don't get you anywhere these days. Trust me.
It's very valuable, actually.
How much?
Thousands.
Can I have it?
No.
What's that?
Oh, my self-portrait.
So obviously Olivia, she's like comedy royalty, getting her involved. So just how did that come about, and what was the?
Just friendship guilt, mainly at the beginning. I'd done a play with her, and we'd become really good friends. And she had seen the play when we brought it back from Edinburgh to London, and she loved it. And she just said, obviously you remember when Olivia Colman said something like this to you, but she said, if you ever want me to do anything, I'll do it. And I was like, sign that. And then, so when it came round, actually the godmother part wasn't in the pilot at that point.
I remember you emailed me and you said, I think Olivia would be up for helping us in the read-through.
And I had this.
But I don't know I'm not sure what she could read, or just something very casual like that. And I was like, oh my God. So then I forwarded it to Jack and Harry and said, what are we doing? There needs to be a character in here or something. And then I think you probably about half an hour rang me, like half an hour later rang me going, I think I've got something.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah, it's
this
one
date.
line in the play, wasn't it?
Yeah, the godmother's mentioned one line, but only as being upstairs and trying to be quiet at the top of the stairs. Just that was like the only line about her. But so I didn't really. But all I did know is that Olivia, she'd been playing such lovely, warm characters for so long. I just thought, how can we utilise that and then also get write a part that she'll can't resist, basically, and that was the trick, really. Just said she's just the most adorable person in the world, but inside she's steel and is horrible and awful. And Collie was like, lovely, let's do it. And so yeah, I think so yeah. Then she did the read through and the pilot
And Shan, so your sister, you've always said that if you were ever going to have a sister, she would be the one.
Yeah, we were at drama school together, and we always wanted to play sisters. So it was great getting to do it. And we just have quite a sisterly energy, I think, anyway. And she, and it's astonishing to me that she's done loads and loads of theatre, but she hasn't done that huge amount of TV. So it was so exciting knowing that she was landing in the show as well. Everyone was just like, who's that girl? It was great. She's amazing.
So is that thing just a little bit of sort of takeaway of like it had been a play successful, that read through, loads of kind of your acolytes and people you'd worked with had come to it, so it was fully formed before it ever got to telly. So I don't know, when Lee Max does a Not Going Out, he'll do it 3 times in a theatre pub, so he knows every joke, where it's going to land, where it's going to hit. It's just that thing of getting things really match fit and formed before you go near telly is one little truism from today.
Yeah, like knowing that the jokes that were taken from the play had been. I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but the confidence in playing that was like second to none. Knowing that I'd done this run 2 or 3 times, those jokes work. People laugh. If I do it in the same way down the camera, it will work. And then you start going into the material the new material, and that obviously was a bit more. Intimidating.
Because you'd only just written the play when we went up to Edinburgh, and so we were rehearsing it with an audience, weren't we? We were rehearsing it every day in our tiny flat. Yeah, but the audience was there giving us feedback constantly, and so we were really nurturing it with direct relationship with an audience, yeah.
And that's really how we honed the tone so much. It's not like I just went into a little room and little birds flew around and I just wrote this play, whatever, you know.
It was road tested quite.
Yeah, and I just think with comedy and sitcoms as well, I think to go at it cold, just based on your own instinct, it's so hard as well, because everyone's so busy on set anyway, you don't even get anything from them, so all the crew, everything, and I'm like, and everyone's just like switching switches and stuff. You have to have confidence that having the echo of that laugh was helpful at times.
Now we're going to go on to the awkward section. I've got the, right, this is going to be, I'm going to fuck this up royally. In descriptions, any female comedy always gets described as having a feminist agenda. You're a bit, you don't like to describe it as a feminist type show, do you?
No, I do. Oh my God, of course. Yeah. This is it's a little trap, this one, I found, because I do completely. I'm so proud of the fact that people are calling it a feminist show. I just was getting slightly grumbly about the fact that, first of all, any shows written by women suddenly became categorized as a feminist show as a type of show, and usually when you unpack that, it means a show written about a woman by a woman. Yeah. And really, I think a feminist show is one that just, shows deep and complex female characters, and so that was really important to me with Fleabag, and I think politically and personally that it is a feminist show. It
deals with feminism. I mean, the hands up bit with the feminist lecture, when the lecturer asks if the women in the audience would give up 5 years of their life for the so-called perfect body, which was a question which came up years ago, and we discussed, and both of us privately admitted to each other that we sort of would, you know. I mean, obviously there's the whole, is it at the end of your life or like straight away or whatever, but we would do a lot to just get the perfect body, and we felt guilty about that. And so what we were sort of like talking about when you wrote that was the question of, is there a sort of feminism now that can speak to young women in the place in the world that they live in, in the media being what it is, and the fact of how we feel about ourselves being what it is. Can we assuage ourselves of some guilt for being a woman in this world and also being a feminist? I think that's being dealt with much better now, and people are talking about these kinds of questions a lot more now. But at the time, we felt like there was no sort of leading voice in feminism to talk about how we navigate that. And and then the point when you say to your dad, I can't even call myself a feminist, you know, hopefully those two things connect together, and you know, the audience can take from that it is deeply trying to talk about feminism, but talking about a real woman in this world and how she might feel.
She knows that she is one, but she feels like she's getting it wrong somehow.
Yeah, yeah. And
I think it's unhelpful when the label is used to pigeonhole. So when you're like, it's a feminist comedy, or this is a piece of feminist television, you're sort of, it feels like you're just like, well, it's not for me because I'm not really sort of into that. It just feels like a convenient way of sort of tidying something.
It's like a word that somehow suddenly you feel like you're being chased with, you know, and it's when it's something that is meant to empower and meant to articulate. And so, yeah, I just feel like the more we try and talk about that, the better.
And then one of the elements that gets blurred into that is people going, oh, it's one of the filthiest shows that's been on telly, it's really sexualised, and I don't know, there's a massive double standards there between what male comedy can cover and what female comedy traditionally can cover, and how do you feel about that?
Well, the funniest thing is that there's no explicit nudity or anything like that on the show, and people say to me, like, it's so rude. I had an interview once and someone was like, what's it like being naked on, writing yourself a naked part when you're naked all the time? And I was like, what? And I was like, do you think it's because I just look straight down the barrel and say, like, arsehole, and that makes everyone feel like they're naked, I'm naked, like, just like she said. I think it was the candor of the language that made it seem like that. And I think, because people were saying it was so shockingly filthy and stuff, and to be completely honest, I was like, is it?
It was definitely, you definitely wanted to talk at the time about the impact of porn and a woman who is self-sexualised.
She sexualises everything.
Yeah, because she felt like her value was in her sexual appeal to men, and that she, you know, her body was sort of all she had, really, to, you know, that was worth anything in this world. And the sort of onslaught of images, of sexualised images and porn was something that we really talked about in the play originally. And the fact that we thought maybe in the backstory that she'd been the one as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old that knew how to get hold of or look up porn or something like that, and that had grown with her, that she sort of had this identity which was connected to it, and she felt like she couldn't escape it, but these horrible images are constantly seeping into her consciousness. And so she's sort of, sex has become something that she as a transaction for her.
And it had to mean something, you know, like the fact that she's showing, you know, the audience her sex life and her opinions about it, and the fact that she's not really enjoying it, or she is enjoying it, or as long as it meant something and didn't feel gratuitous, then yeah, I think it has its value in that story. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing how much that was picked up on compared to the amount of like wanking and shagging and so many male-driven sitcoms, and it's like, oh, I think this is about like a dystopian future. You're like, you just wanked for half an hour, and I have one little wank and all this feminist stuff, and
Filthy. And then part of that plays into the broader thing about comedies always traditionally being quite a blokey thing. It's a lot of it's written by blokes. Even today, you'll get scripts and it'll say "pretty girl next door" type stuff, and you have these very cliched representations for female characters. That must be a really frustrating thing for you, and in writing this, you're addressing that, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating when you see character names when it's like Jeremy, and he's like, he's a physicist, he's interested, and he has a complicated relationship with this person who's erudite, and this is great at skateboarding, whatever, and then it's like, Paula,
curvy,
fit,
bubbly.
And you're like, okay, how do I work with that? And that happens a lot. It does happen. I think less now actually, but I think people become more aware of it. But I was so aware of that when I was reading scripts, and you just already go in feeling angry, or it's not fit. So I could see that or that, and then you're like, so yeah, and so I feel like that had been a pattern that people. I think also it's not necessarily that everyone just sees the world in that way. I think also people see comedy in that way. Like it becomes an archetype, and that's what feels right. So someone will write something and go, feels like there should be a hot girl that the guy's chasing, and let's not worry about what she's feeling about it because it doesn't feel right. And so I actually have all those scripts to thank for getting me to a place where I actually just went, oh, what if it was from the female perspective? And what if the guy was called Arsehole Guy and Rodent Mouth, and there was or Tube Rodent. It was really purposeful that was the case, that she saw the world not as a prod to comedy, but that she sees the world in that way, that she objectifies people very quickly, and that she sees them as one thing or the other, and usually very just from the way they look, and describes people the way they look very quickly. Came out of that same rage.
Yeah, good. Keep going. And then I think part of that massive appeal is because so much of comedy is quite a blokey thing that appeals only to blokes. This resonated very widely across, you'd probably say the split, like male and female fanship is about the same.
Yeah.
So it's not off-putting by exploring this female perspective and viewpoint and experience to males. It's, you know, it's not split like that, is it?
No, I just think the relief, you know, I think the relief of seeing somebody that people can relate to, a female comedy character people can relate to, that's dark and weird for men and women.
The themes are universal, like it's grief and loneliness, friendship, family. These aren't, they're sort of seen through the prism of female eyes in this particular circumstance, but they're not kind of only relevant to this gender or this gender.
And also crushing down your real feelings. You know, I think men really experience that too. Trying to hide what you're really feeling and come across as fine and tough and cool and everything's all right. So, yeah, you get a lot of big blokes, don't you, going, love Fleabag.
Yeah, they do, yeah. Oh, this guy who's really broken-hearted by Boo. And he was such a surprising person to have seen the show. He was really emotional. It was in a pub, but he caught me on the way to the loo. He was like, Boo! I was like, what? And he was like, Boo! I know, man, I know. But something I love is that I get people telling me so often that it's their parents that told them to watch it because their parents, it reminds them of them. So it's like going, my dad said it was like me. I love that people's dads were going, darling, I've seen someone who I think I understand you now. But it being a positive thing, you know, and that they're being able to talk, and people saying that they're talking about, there's one woman told me she was watching it, this female vicar was telling me she was watching it with her 14-year-old son, because it just like makes them talk about things that would not other talk about. I mean, I think that's awesome.
Good, it's public service.
Yes, exactly.
You get a lot of older, quite senior figures at the BBC who really want to meet you, and you think, oh yeah, hello. Yeah. It seems to go well with old men for some reason. Anyway, I've said too much. We're here, this is it's a little bit grandiose to go, how do you make an international hit? Here's the formula.
I know, who came up with that title?
Sussman, blame Sussman. But we should talk about the kind of how it has become that, and in terms of it going global, Amazon's been a part of that journey.
Yeah.
So they got involved post-pilot because you wanted it to have that sort of big kind of dramatic look and ambition and tone and scale to the whole thing. How was that journey? How did that come about, that relationship with Amazon?
We took, so via All 3 Media, who were our distribution partner and now our parent company, they took the pilot to 3 American broadcasters in the first instance, and we spoke on the phone with all of them, and they had the sort of normal questions about where it might go and what because they hadn't seen the play in most cases, so I think they didn't necessarily know the story. And then we had those kind of initial conversations. It was all very loose, and then Amazon felt like they had the most, like we were sort of on the same page, and they got the show, and they were well up for keeping the same, like the DNA of it the same, and they weren't going to Americanize it or anything like that. And then, so they basically came on as an acquisition partner after that, and then they were very kind of hands off. They were really supportive. They came to set a few times, they were very excited, but they weren't kind of...
There was no interference on notes or casting or any of that?
There was like an idiom that got mistranslated, or they thought it was an idiom. Do you remember? So in episode 2, where Fleabag tries to get back with Harry, and she says, sorry, did I interrupt you? And then he says, oh no, I was in the interval of cats. And then Amazon wrote this note saying, what is an interval of cats? Oh yeah. So we were like, okay.
Surreal.
So there is actually
one note for the whole episode.
So there is actually a line of ADR in the American version, if you ever watch it, that says the musical just over the top.
ADR.
That's funny.
And they also didn't get B-Day doesn't work out there either.
Oh yeah, B-Day. They thought it was like birthday, Godmother's B-Day.
She had her first orgasm on her birthday. But they were so great, yeah. They were just really into it being its own thing, and that freedom that they brought us they were just, yeah, like after the read-through and stuff, they were just, cool.
Great.
It's cool.
They
Great,
were
thanks.
really...
And they did, when they felt something strongly, they would come in, but they wanted it to be what
they bought.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's led to, obviously, a huge profile for you, and you must get way more offers. And how are you coping with that profile and the big success?
Well, it led to getting another writing job straight away afterwards. So I've really just sort of been in a cave, really, since it happened. So on one level, I feel so excited that it's happened, and that I hear of this profile. I hear of this, but I think going back to work straight away and getting just completely neck deep in it. I mean, it's just been so mad busy. I suppose you chase it in some way. You sort of think, oh God, I'm off now. I've got to do as good as Fleabag was, or there's that element of it. But essentially, it just creates more work. I've discovered, which is great.
There's a clip of you on Jimmy Fallon. We should have a look at just for a joy. Can we have a go at this?
Oh, but Vicky was there, and she just kept saying, don't lean forward, don't lean forward. And then I sat down, I went, ah! Vicky was like, no! I had like 2 whole chickens in there as well. Just like,
You had one job.
Vicky was like, stay.
So you mentioned, what are you guys up to next? You mentioned Killing Eve is
Yes.
the writing gig for BBC America.
For BBC America, yeah. Drama.
Drama.
Yeah.
8 hours, is it?
8-part drama.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, bloody hell, yeah. And I think, it was an amazingly exciting departure from Fleabag, because the half-hour comedy with the surprise bit of drama in it suddenly became just do the surprise for 8 hours, and with a little bit of comedy in it. So we're halfway through that, and Vicky was writing on that as well.
Oh, brilliant.
It's been really great to
You're
work
not in
together.
that, or are you in that?
No, I'm not in that. I really wrote myself out of any possibility of any casting. I was like, we need a really bendy 22-year-old assassin. I was like, why did I do that? And then I was like, and then the woman chasing her has to be 46. And I was like, well, why have I done that? And then I was like, well, maybe I should create a character that I wanted to die in it, have a really brutal death. And then I just didn't write myself in anything like that either. I don't know why I didn't do that.
Redraft.
Yes. There's still time.
And Dry White's still a very ongoing, active. Vicky, if anyone gets a chance, is Touch going to tour, or you'll play Touch?
Well, I don't know yet, but it's finishing on Saturday.
Really?
In Soho Theatre.
It's absolutely brilliant. And again, that's another sort of girl from Swansea comes to the big city, and it's a sort of, again, biographical tale of different men in her life and how she responds to that. And
Yes, it's about a girl kind of trying to work out who she is emotionally and sexually, I think.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And Liddy, do you want to do the big news today? Do you want to tell us what's going to happen with
Am I
Fleabag?
doing the big news?
Yeah, come on.
So we are going to do a second series.
Your first to hear. But not until 2026.
Yeah, not in my lifetime.
I just want to flash forward to Granny Fleabag.
It's going to be on your screens in 2019, so it's quite a long way.
Yeah.
But it's happening.
Brilliant. And that's, I know it's not even near the page yet, but you've got the vision for it. Is there any, so are we jumping forward in time with her, or was there anything we can tease today, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
I had really struggled thinking about how to come back, because I didn't want to stretch the story even further than I already stretched it, and I felt like the relationship with the audience had evolved by the end, and so that's what's been taking us so long, and me so long, to decide whether or not we're going to do it again. And then I was on a bus and had an idea. Called Lydia and was like, what about this? She was like, yes, go. So really, really excited.
So that's going to develop.
It'll be as experimental.
Okay, we've got sort of about 10 minutes before we wrap up. I thought we'd do some Q&A, and there's microphones kicking around. So can we, if you want to put your hand up, and we'll take some questions from the floor. Come on, don't be shy. Who have we got? There we go. Gentleman in the green top.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for saying hello to me. That was so nice. That's all I wanted to do. Cheers. What I just wanted to ask about was when you was actually creating Fleabag, and you obviously put yourself in it, but how did you add more to the character of Fleabag and the other characters to bounce off as well?
Well, immediately the first thing was knowing that I wasn't going to play all the characters anymore really helped, because then when you have Hugh Skinner in your cast and you know he's going to play your boyfriend, and you just, I mean, that was so inspiring having Hugh. The moment it was cast, basically, I already started generating ideas about what I wanted to see those actors play and do. And then it was really about teasing out the relationships more, deepening the relationships more. And then there was always just a wall of post-it notes of funny things that was like in this room in my house, and we all sat there just basically going, who could this funny thing apply to? I mean, it was really basic like that, really. I go, we've got Hugh Skinner, let's put him in a shower and let's scare the shit out of him. And we were like, that sounds funny, let's do that. So it was driving towards the moments that I knew I wanted to be in. I knew I wanted in it, and then creating longer arcs for the relationships and more characters around that. So it was really, but really the actors that we cast really helped.
I think the way you are with characters is that you really notice things about people and remember things, so little tiny moments and so on. Phoebe's always collecting those somehow and noticing things that would just pass me by, and I'll be like, oh yeah, they did say that or do that. And also she just has such a big heart, you know. She sort of loves kindness and decency and so on. It's sort of, if I may say, so hurt by cruelty and so on. So I feel like that's always imbued your characters, that they may say terrible things, but then they're often, you love them, you know, you can feel their heart underneath. I think also that she tends to bury things in subtext. Like, we always have a thing when we watch any shows together that Phoebe can guess what's going to happen at the end. It's maddening for me. But I think you make your stories and your arcs and your characters Phoebe-proof in that you can't guess what's going to happen to them by the end. She's staying ahead of the audience constantly.
Did you have influences or reference points that brought to bear on Fleabag? Did you, or things you didn't want it to be? What was sort of it?
I remember after it came out, there was lots of kind of slightly lazy comparisons of, it was quite Bridget Jones, isn't it? And you were like, this just feels like that was the last thing that maybe really resonated, that seemed to really hit all the kind of points of what people wanted to discuss about at that time. So I feel like I always never wanted it to be kind of, it's a new version of that, or I just think that. So I was always aware of that.
Louis C.K.'s show, Louis, was a really big inspiration. But just the audacity of him structuring it however the fuck he wanted, and whatever kind of joke he wanted, and allowing that character to go and be whoever he wanted it to be. That, I mean, I just thought his 5 series of that or whatever are just so beautiful. I just watched them over and over and over again. And but originally, it's weird when you go, we want to make something that isn't like anything else, and then your references become so random. But then, and actually, when I first was writing the play, my husband gave me Less Than Zero by Bret Easton Ellis. And he was like, I think this might help. And that had a huge impact on the play, actually. I keep sort of forgetting that going into books actually helps me more than watching other TV, because mainly you're watching it going, they nailed that, they did that, damn, I was going to do that joke, or I want to do that, you know. And then, but when you actually disappear into your own imagination with other characters and feel and see structure in books, I think
that's
really
about a
helps.
character who holds back on his emotions, all these terrible things happening to him, and he seems unaffected by it, and then just towards the end you get this tiny little chink of humanity, and you feel so desperately grateful for it. So that as a paradigm was really helpful for you, wasn't it?
Wonderful. Any more questions? Anyone? We've got one at the front here, and then I'll come to you.
Having written both comedy and drama, which do you find easier or more enjoyable? And if for the rest of your life you could only do one or the other, which would you choose?
Oh, no, I don't think I could, because I think they're so intrinsically linked. I feel like if there's comedy, if people are laughing, they're kind of giving you their heart a bit. And so they're sort of asking you to break it in some way, I think, because I don't know. I just feel like they're they're too closely entwined. I found it, when I was writing Fleabag and Crashing, I was like, I just want to write fucking drama. Hate this, like, having to do a tick thing on the page of like, there's like 6 jokes on this page, and it having to be about generating material and jokes was exhausting. But now I'm writing a drama, I'm like, I just want to put a joke in everything. It's like how do I know if it works, or where's the humanity? I think finding the humanity in drama for me has been an interesting journey, because I think people being funny or jokes reveal so much so quickly about a character. But people staring meaningfully down a corridor and then walking with absolutely no sense of humour to go and sign a form, I'm like what's fun about that? but it's important. So I don't know. There's a lot of humour in the drama that I'm writing. So I don't know. I think I just have to kill you if you made me answer that question.
I think you've always said as well that drama and comedy feel intrinsically linked to you because you're vulnerable when you're laughing, and so you can get them, you can spike them with the dramatic thing. But the reverse works as well when there's something very dramatic.
Relief.
The relief of laughing, and when you want to cry is sort of an extreme emotional experience.
And also the self-awareness of people in real life. Like, when you're in a really dramatic argument or something with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, and you have an argument, and then there's a little part of your brain that goes, oh my God, we're having a massive argument? Yeah. It's like you kind of see that. I get that in the writing, like, especially with the writing of the drama, like, when everyone's like, and all the policemen are like, it's like everyone's being dramatic. There's always got to be one person who's like, all right. Calm down, it's not like it hasn't been done before, People have been murdered before.
But also staying ahead, like not knowing what's going to happen next, puts you in a certain state of absolutely watching, just being glued into it, because you literally don't know what's going to happen to you next. And that is something that I've seen you do with audiences so many times.
Surprise. Lovely. There was a lady over here, on the end. Hi.
Hi, I'm Becky from the BBC. I just wanted to say thank you for writing such amazing, complex, funny women on screen. Absolutely loved it. My question was about the release model and the fact that it was one of the first scripted comedies that went out on BBC3 online, a new kind of on-demand world where stuff is available for much longer. Did you think that was part of its success, in that it was able to kind of grow over a longer period of time, or do you find that more challenging because you don't have like that linear release pattern where like people are talking about something at the same time every week, and that kind of builds up the awareness of it?
When it was commissioned, BBC3 was still a linear channel, and by the time it was made, it had gone online. What do you think? Did it affect the kind of?
I don't know what it would have been otherwise. I think there's something really lovely about people finding the show rather than the show. I think when it's linear and it's on TV, that you interrupt people's lives in their living rooms and you go, this is the show. I think there's a sense of it being a found piece for people, really helped with that sense of a discovery. And that helped with the word of mouth, I think. Lots of people were saying, I found this show on my computer. Myself. But I don't know, it's sort of hard to know what would have...
We had a bit of the best of both, because it actually had a weekly release on iPlayer, on BBC3, and onto the iPlayer when it first came out. So every week it got a bit of a bump in the kind of reviews and stuff, like the new ones come out. And so there was a bit of that going on at the very beginning, which I think generated some word of mouth. And then it was there, all available. So lots of people I knew chose to wait until all 6 were there and then to watch the whole thing.
And then I had the BBC Two.
And then I had the BBC Two, yes.
It's that thing like when The Office, this is a bit of a cliched one, but when The Office first went out, it was largely ignored, and it was when it was repeated. It's that thing that exactly your thing about if you tell people it's funny, it's the show not tell thing. If you ram it down people's throats too much, they go, all right, let me make my own mind out. Whereas if you discover it, it's the cult, you're part of a club. Yeah. So I think the iPlayer sort of helps that, doesn't it?
I think it did, and I think weirdly for the tone of the show, there was like a naughtiness about the show that we really wanted, that she is just going, hey, you, come here. And actually that kind of worked for the online thing, I think, that it felt that it wasn't, that it was its own little corner of the world. But I only watch things on iPlayer anyway. So.
Yeah. Any more? I've probably got time for 2 more questions. 2 more. It's like a terrible auction, this. No one wants to buy. At the back.
Hello. So I was wondering, my question's in terms of structure. And I know you said you had quite a lot of guidance from Lydia when you got to from stage 2, structuring it for TV. But I just wondered how you tackled that difference. And obviously you're writing the play, and then that's got a certain structure to it. You transfer that to TV. And the reason I'm asking is because I write scenes, and I think, oh, that's a lovely scene. Yeah. And then I can't put that anywhere or structure into... I mean, with the risk of the answer being just be Phoebe Waller-Bridge if you want to write an international hit comedy. I just wondered, I'm trying, how you tackled that kind of difference.
God, I was in exactly the same position you were in. Scenes, jokes, I have ideas, but they're just fitting them together. I think if you have enough that you can write them on post-its and write them on your wall and just put them together. Because I think I've never thought structure first. I've always thought material first. And I think you're the same, aren't you, Vix? And it's how we operate so much. Material first, jokes first, character first. And then we just put them all on the wall. And then, honestly, just the game of what if you put this next to this? And usually the more unusual that pairing is of those scenes, or those scenes that you put in an episode, the more interesting it comes, or that something happens when you put two things that shouldn't be together. And then you start pulling a story out of that. This is probably really bad advice, because I know you're supposed to structure first, and then you send it to your commissioners and go, this is the structure of the episode, and just send like a screwed up post-it note going, that's out. But that really, really helped, was just knowing that as long as you're enjoying writing those scenes, then once you've got enough, then start playing with it. I think the hook thing at the end that was really helpful. I growled about that at the beginning.
So the sort of note that came back from the BBC was the pilot was kind of on purpose meandering and slightly what's the word? Not, I guess, not very traditional in what you'd expect for like sitcom structure. And the note came back saying, is there just a way we can make sure we're really hooking the audience for the next episode? And I remember you being like, I'm not writing 24. I was like, no.
But this is the statue.
The statue became like, it's a tiny thing, but like Fleabag stealing the statue from Godmother and then getting Martin to try and sell it for her, and then him giving it to Claire. It just became a way of us making sure that we were just had like a little thread that was just running, that we kind of were...
I remember it was a millstone around your neck for the longest time, though. She was like, I don't care about
Who cares about the statue?
So boring. Who cares about the statue? But it ended up being really useful,
You do need it.
Yeah.
But you're right. But,
you knew about the revelation for Boo as well, didn't you?
Yes, knowing the end really, really helps.
Yeah.
And then, you should just go as far away from the end emotionally as you possibly can. That's my instinct anyway. And I think knowing how and we were doing our dry write stuff, theatre stuff early on, a lot of our experiments were how do you want to make the audience feel? Like, what is the emotional journey you want them to go on? And that really helps me, rather than thinking starting off thinking like this would work A story, B story, C story. It's at this point, if you found a moment, a scene that you know works and is going to make them feel that you need to hit them with it as a surprise. So then work away from that. And it's very instinctual. Sorry, was that at all helpful? Sorry.
We've got one more. Anyone fancy rounding us off? No. We were complete. So, in conclusion, how you make an international hit, otherwise they're going to want their money back. How you make an international hit is find kindreds. Well, firstly, deal with the disillusion of whoever fucked that play up.
Thank God.
Find kindreds. Road test things live. Find that world, and when it comes to TV, don't compromise it in any way, shape, or form. Seems to be the thing.
Yes. Yeah. In the end.
Yeah, not compromising is a big one for you, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think even though you're so lovely, you know what you want, and I think you stick to that. And
I think if you feel really, really, really sure about something, then really fight for it. Because often I think people are asking questions because they're feeling their way around what you're trying to make. And so, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong here, but with notes and things, it's not always that people want you to change it completely, but if you come back fighting, they're like, whoa, fine, as long as you know what you're doing, as long as you know, then it's fine. And I think it's just identifying what you feel sure about and then just following that.
Notes can feel like a mandate, but then, if you see them as help.
Yeah, they're questions, really. I think.
Yeah. Pointers. And you've got to work hard, right, guys? Yeah? Come on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's why it's taken 2 years.
Yeah, talking things over and over and over. I remember
out
that.
loud. Finding someone you can work with is a huge thing.
And
Drink with.
Drink with,
And actually, that's really important. A lot of Fleabag was done with half a bottle of wine down already, because you work all day in the rehearsal room or developing stuff, and you're so up against it, and you're like, this has to be professional, and I have to come up with this, and we won't get anything done. And then it's the half hour in the pub afterwards when all those ideas, your brain relaxes, and then all the ideas come. So allow yourself that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for an amazing experience. It's a phenomenon. We can't wait for the second series. I want to thank Chris Sussman for putting this all together. And the sponsor is the BBC, so thank you to me for that. Wonderful.
Thank you.
But let's hear it for Phoebe, Vicky and Lydia.